The wind howled like a wounded beast through the mountain pass, driving sheets of snow so thick that Eliza Munro could barely see her mare's ears. Her fingers, numb despite the leather gloves, clutched desperately at the reins as the horse struggled through knee-deep drifts. The storm had come from nowhere, sweeping down from the north with the fury of God's own wrath, catching her miles from any shelter she knew. She had been riding for 3 days, following the barely there trail that the man in Billings had sworn would lead her to Cook City. "Your cousin's got a boarding house there," he'd said, eyeing her traveling dress and the bruise she'd tried to hide beneath her bonnet. "Good Christian woman. She'll take you in." Now, as the blizzard raged around her, Eliza wondered if she'd ever see that boarding house or anything else again. The cold was a living thing, crawling beneath her wool coat and the 3 layers of petticoats, seeking her bones. Her teeth chattered so hard she feared they might crack. The mare stumbled, whinnying in distress. Eliza leaned forward, trying to encourage the animal. But the wind chose that moment to slam into them with renewed force. The horse's hooves slipped on ice hidden beneath the snow, and suddenly they were falling, tumbling down the steep embankment in a chaos of snow and screaming wind. Eliza hit the ground hard, the breath driven from her lungs. Snow filled her mouth, her eyes, her ears. The mare's weight rolled over her leg before the animal scrambled away, and pain shot through her ankle like lightning. She tried to call out, but the wind stole her voice. Tried to stand, but her leg buckled beneath her. "This is how I die," she thought with strange clarity. Not from his fists, but from my own foolish pride in thinking I could make this journey alone. She dragged herself to the shelter of a large boulder, her skirts heavy with snow, every movement agony. The world had become a white wall, directionless and merciless. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to make herself small, trying to preserve what little warmth remained in her body. Her eyelids grew heavy, so heavy, just a moment's rest, she told herself, just until the storm passes. But she knew, somewhere in the part of her mind still capable of reason, that if she closed her eyes now, she would never open them again. Through the howling wind came another sound, the crunch of boots on snow, steady and purposeful. Eliza forced her eyes open, squinting through the white veil. A shadow emerged from the storm, tall and broad-shouldered, moving with the sure stride of someone who belonged to these mountains. The man stopped when he saw her, then moved quickly to her side. She caught a glimpse of a weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat, eyes the color of winter sky, before he was kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" His voice was deep, roughened by cold or disuse. She tried to answer, but only managed a weak nod. Without another word, he scooped her into his arms as if she weighed no more than a child. She wanted to protest. She didn't know this man, couldn't trust him, but her body had ceased to obey her commands. She could only let her head fall against his chest, breathing in the scent of leather and wood smoke and something wild, like pine resin. How long he carried her through the storm, she couldn't say. Time had become elastic, stretching and contracting with each labored breath. She drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the steady rhythm of his stride and the solid warmth of his body against hers. When next she opened her eyes, she was inside. Firelight danced across rough-hewn log walls. She lay on something soft, a bed of furs near a stone hearth where flames crackled and sparked. Her wet clothes had been replaced with a man's shirt and woolen blankets that smelled of cedar and smoke. Panic seized her. She tried to sit up, but the room spun violently. "Easy." The man appeared at her side, pressing a tin cup to her lips. "Drink this." The liquid was bitter, some kind of herb tea, but it was hot, and she drank greedily. As the warmth spread through her chest, she studied her rescuer. He was perhaps 35, with dark hair that needed cutting and several days' worth of stubble. His face was all hard angles and weather-worn planes, handsome in the way of men who lived by their own strength. But it was his eyes that held her, gray as the storm outside, and filled with a wariness that matched her own. "My horse," she managed to whisper. "Found her way to my lean-to. She's fed and watered." He moved away, busying himself at the fire. "Storm's not letting up? You'll have to stay put for a while." "How long is a while?" He glanced toward the single window, where snow pressed against the glass like seeking fingers. "Could be days. These mountain storms don't follow anyone's schedule but their own." "Days, trapped here with a stranger." Eliza pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "I need to get to Cook City. My cousin—" "Your cousin will have to wait." His tone brooked no argument. "You try to leave in this weather. You'll be dead before you make it a mile. That ankle of yours needs time to heal besides." She looked down, noticing for the first time that her left foot was wrapped and elevated on a folded blanket. The pain had dulled to a steady throb. "I'm obliged to you for your help. Mr. Hartwell, Cole Hartwell." He didn't ask her name, and she didn't offer it. The cabin was small, one room with a bed of furs where she lay, a rough table and 2 chairs, shelves lined with supplies, everything neat and ordered, but with the sparse functionality of a man who lived alone and liked it that way. No decorations, no softness anywhere except for the furs that warmed her. "You live here alone?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "I do." He handed her a plate with beans and hard biscuit. "Eat what you can manage." She ate slowly, aware of his eyes on her, not in the way she'd grown accustomed to men looking at her, with hunger or calculation, but with a kind of detached assessment, as if she were a wounded animal he was determining how to handle. "The storm caught you unprepared," he said. It wasn't a question. "I thought I could make it before it hit." She set the half-empty plate aside. "I was wrong." Mountains don't forgive that kind of wrong. He took the plate, his fingers brushing hers briefly. She was surprised by the gentleness in hands that looked capable of breaking a man in half. "Where's your husband?" The question hit her like a physical blow. She turned her face toward the fire. "Dead." She lied, the word tasting like ash. He said nothing, but she felt the weight of his silence. After a moment, he rose and pulled on a heavy coat. "Where are you going?" "Check on the animals, bank the wood pile." He paused at the door. "Bar this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." Why would anyone else? "Just do it." Then he was gone, swallowed by the white fury beyond the door. Eliza struggled to her feet, hobbled to the door, and dropped the heavy wooden bar into place. The effort left her breathless and dizzy. She made her way back to the furs, collapsed onto them, and let the exhaustion she'd been fighting finally claim her. When she woke, the cabin was dark except for the dying fire. The door stood open, snow swirling in, the bar lying on the floor. Her heart hammered as she searched the shadows. But then Cole appeared, carrying an armload of wood. He kicked the door shut behind him, his coat and hat white with snow. "Told you to keep that barred," he said mildly, rebuilding the fire. "I did. I must have been asleep. I didn't hear you knock." Didn't knock." He fed wood to the flames until they roared back to life. "Been doing this alone long enough to find ways around a barred door, but others might not be so considerate." The implication chilled her more than the storm. Are there others out here? Sometimes trappers, hunters, men running from something or to something. His gray eyes found hers across the fire. "Which are you?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Eliza lifted her chin. "I'm running to my cousin in Cook City, nothing more." "Man must have been a fool," Cole said quietly. "What?" "Your husband. To let you go off alone like this. Man's got a wife. He protects her, keeps her safe." Something twisted in Eliza's chest, grief or anger. She couldn't tell which. Some men have different ideas about what a wife is for. Cole studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he saw more than she meant to show. But he only nodded and turned back to the fire. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll see about that ankle." She lay back on the furs, watching him move about the cabin, checking windows, securing the door. His movements were economical, practiced, a man accustomed to solitude, to self-reliance. Yet he'd carried her through a blizzard, tended her injuries, shared his shelter. The contradiction intrigued her even as wariness warned her to be careful. Outside, The storm raged on, sealing them in this small space together. Two strangers with their secrets, with nowhere to go but toward each other or away. And, for now, the mountain had taken that choice from them both. The first morning brought no relief from the storm. Eliza woke to find Cole already up, coffee brewing on the stove and the smell of frying bacon filling the small space. He moved with quiet efficiency, and she watched him through half-closed eyes, studying this man who'd saved her life. "Your ankle needs checking," he said without turning, somehow knowing she was awake. She sat up slowly, the borrowed shirt falling loose around her shoulders. "I can manage." "No doubt you can." He brought her a cup of coffee, black and strong enough to strip paint. "But you'll let me look anyway." His hands were gentle as he unwrapped the binding, though she noticed they trembled slightly when his fingers brushed her skin. The ankle was swollen, but not as bad as she'd feared. "Not broken," he pronounced, rewrapping it with clean cloth. "Few days off it, you'll be fine. I don't have a few days." "You don't have a choice." He stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "Storms got worse overnight. We're buried in good and proper now." She tested the ankle, wincing at the sharp pain. He was right. Curse him. She could barely stand, let alone ride. "My clothes." Drying by the fire, they were soaked through. He gestured to a trunk in the corner. "There might be something in there that'll fit better than my shirt." The trunk was cedar, well made. Inside she found women's clothes. 2 dresses, undergarments, a shawl, everything carefully folded, smelling of lavender long faded. Her hand stilled on the fabric. "Your wife's?" she asked softly. "Yes." The word came out clipped, final. She closed the trunk without taking anything. "The shirt is fine." They settled into an uneasy rhythm as the day wore on. Cole went about his tasks, tending the fire, preparing food, checking the animals in the lean-to attached to the cabin. Eliza tried to help where she could, hobbling about on her injured ankle, but he waved away most of her attempts. "Sit," he ordered when she tried to wash the dishes. "You'll make it worse. I'm not accustomed to being idle." "Then get accustomed to it." She watched him work, noting the economy of his movements, the way he never quite turned his back on her completely. A lawman's habit, she thought, though he didn't look like any lawman she'd known. Too much wilderness in him, too much solitude carved into the lines around his eyes. By afternoon, the cabin walls seemed to press closer. The wind screamed through the passes, rattling the windows in their frames. Snow piled against the door until Cole had to force it open to clear a path. Each time he went out, Eliza found herself holding her breath until he returned. "How long have you lived here?" she asked during one of the brief lulls in the storm's fury. 3 years. He was oiling a rifle, the movements automatic. "Maybe 4. You don't remember? Time moves different up here. Seasons matter more than years." She understood that. Time had moved strangely for her too. These past months, some days felt like years, some years like days. "It must be lonely." "Lonely's not the worst thing a man can be." The weight in his words made her look up. He was staring into the fire, the rifle forgotten in his hands, and for a moment his careful control slipped. She saw grief there, raw and deep as a fresh wound, before he shuddered it away. That night, the temperature dropped until ice formed on the inside of the windows. Cole built the fire up until it roared, but still the cold crept in through every crack and gap. Eliza huddled in her blankets, trying not to let her teeth chatter. "Here." Cole dropped another fur over her, then surprised her by sitting on the floor near her makeshift bed, his back against the wall. "Body heat helps. Don't read anything into it." She should have been afraid, alone with a strange man, dependent on his goodwill. But something about Cole Hartwell made fear seem foolish. He was dangerous. Yes, she could see it in the way he moved, the way his hand never strayed far from a weapon, but not to her. "Tell me about Cook City," he said into the comfortable silence. "This cousin of yours." "Margaret Sawyer, my mother's cousin. Actually, she wrote me last year, said she'd started a boarding house." Said there was opportunity there for a woman willing to work hard. And you're willing? I've worked hard all my life. Mr. Hartwell, just not always at things of my own choosing. He was quiet for a moment. Your husband, was he a bad man? The question surprised her with its directness. Why do you ask? The way you hold yourself, like you're expecting a blow. Seen it before. In my line of work. What line of work was that? I wore a badge once, down in Colorado. Not anymore? No, not anymore. They sat in silence, listening to the storm rage. The fire crackled and spit, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Eliza found herself relaxing despite herself, the warmth and Cole's steady presence loosening something tight in her chest. He wasn't always bad, she said finally. Thomas, my late husband, he was charming at first, said all the right things. It wasn't until after we married that he showed his true nature. How'd he die? The lie stuck in her throat. Riding accident, she managed. 2 months ago. Cole made a non-committal sound. She couldn't tell if he believed her or not. The second day dawned no better. If anything, the storm had intensified. Cole fought his way to the lean-to to feed the animals and returned covered in snow, ice in his beard. Your mare's doing fine, he reported. Tough little thing. She'd have to be. I bought her from a man who said she'd carried mail through worse than this. You know horses? My father raised them. Before. She stopped, unwilling to share more of her past. Cole didn't push. He never pushed. She noticed, just waited with that patient stillness of his until sometimes she found herself talking anyway, filling the silence with words she hadn't meant to say. They passed the day with small tasks and smaller conversations. Cole showed her how to mend a tear in her riding skirt with tiny, even stitches. She helped him inventory his supplies, learning he was methodical about such things, everything in its place. You expecting a siege? She asked, looking at the stacked goods, flour, beans, salt pork, ammunition. Winter is a siege up here. You prepare or you die. That evening, the wind reached a howling crescendo that made the cabin shudder. A particularly violent gust sent something crashing against the roof. Eliza startled, instinctively reaching out, and found Cole's hand already there, steady and warm. Just a tree branch, he said, but he didn't let go immediately. She looked down at their joined hands, his brown and calloused, hers pale despite the work she'd done. When she looked up, he was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. I should check, he started. Please don't go out there. The words escaped before she could stop them. Not in this. Eliza, her name on his lips for the first time, soft as the snow falling outside. I'm not going anywhere. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Then the wind shrieked again, breaking the spell, and Cole stood, moving away to tend the fire. That night, she dreamed of Thomas finding her, his face twisted with rage, his hands reaching for her throat. She woke, gasping, disoriented in the darkness, and found Cole there, not touching, just sitting nearby with that watchful stillness of his. Just a dream, he said quietly. You're safe. How do you know? Because I won't let anything happen to you, not while you're under my roof. The fierce certainty in his voice undid her. Tears came then, silent and hot, for all the times no one had said those words, all the times she'd been alone with her fear. Cole didn't try to comfort her, didn't move closer or away. He simply sat there, a solid presence in the dark, until her breathing evened and sleep claimed her again. On the third morning, she woke to find him staring out the window, his shoulders tense. What is it? She asked. Storm's breaking. Another day, maybe 2, you'll be able to travel. She should have been relieved. This was what she wanted, to reach Cook City, to start her new life. But something cold settled in her stomach at the thought of leaving this cabin, leaving him. That's good, she said, not meaning it. He turned to look at her then, and she saw her own confusion reflected in his gray eyes. Yeah, good. But neither of them smiled, and the space between them felt suddenly vast as the frozen wilderness outside. The storm refused to break completely, settling instead into a steady snowfall that blocked any thought of travel. By the fourth day, the small cabin had become both sanctuary and prison. Every movement brought them closer together, reaching for the same cup, brushing past in the narrow space between table and hearth. The accidental touch of hands as they shared the simple meals. Eliza had taken to wearing one of the dresses from the trunk, unable to bear Cole's discomfort any longer. The blue calico fit well enough, though she caught him staring sometimes with a haunted look that made her heart ache. "Tell me about her," she said that evening, as they sat by the fire. "Your wife." Cole's jaw tightened. "Nothing to tell. There's everything to tell. She lived. She was loved. That matters." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Sarah. Her name was Sarah. Prettiest girl in Silver Creek. Don't know what she saw in a rough lawman like me, but she said yes when I asked." "How long were you married?" 6 years. Had a daughter, Rose. She was 4 when—" He stopped, unable to continue. Eliza waited, knowing the gift of silence when grief ran too deep for words. "Bank robbery," he said finally, his voice rough. "Gang hit the town while I was transporting a prisoner 2 towns over. My deputy was young, green. He tried to stop them." A bitter laugh. "Sarah was just walking Rose to the milliner's shop. Wrong place, wrong time. They were both gone before I got back. Cole?" She reached for him instinctively. "Don't—" He stood abruptly, moving to the window. "I don't want your pity." "It's not pity." She struggled to her feet, her ankle protesting. "It's understanding. It's knowing what it means to lose everything." He turned then, his eyes blazing. "You didn't lose everything. Your husband died. That's not the same as failing to protect—" He cut himself off, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "No, you're right." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I didn't lose everything because I never had anything real to begin with. Thomas is alive, and if he finds me, he'll kill me for leaving." The confession hung between them like a physical thing. Cole went very still, the lawman in him surfacing. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "The first time was 6 months after our wedding. I'd burned the roast. He was particular about his meals. Eliza, the last time was 2 months ago. He'd been drinking, came home in a rage about something at his business. I don't even know what set him off. But when I woke up in Doc Morrison's surgery, I knew if I stayed, the next time would be the last time." Cole crossed the space between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face with infinite gentleness, tilting it up so she had to meet his eyes. "He won't touch you again. I swear it. You don't know Thomas. He has money, connections. He's probably got men out looking for me right now. Let them come." The fierce protectiveness in his voice undid her. She swayed toward him, and suddenly the careful distance they'd maintained shattered like ice in spring. His arms came around her, pulling her against his chest, and she buried her face in his shirt, breathing in the scent of wood smoke and safety. "I'm scared," she whispered. "All the time. Even here. Even with you." "I know." His hand stroked her hair. "I know what it's like to be scared. After Sarah and Rose, I came up here because I couldn't face another day down there. Couldn't wear the badge knowing I'd failed at the one thing that mattered." She pulled back to look at him. "You didn't fail them. I wasn't there. You couldn't have known. I should have been there." The words came out raw, bleeding. "A man protects his family. That's the only job that counts. And I failed." They stood there, 2 broken people holding each other up, the fire crackling beside them and the snow falling endless outside. Eliza reached up, her fingers tracing the lines of pain carved into his face. "We're both carrying ghosts," she said softly. "Maybe it's time to let them rest." Something shifted in his eyes. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she met him halfway. The kiss was gentle, hesitant, a question asked and answered in the sweet press of lips. She tasted coffee and sorrow, and something like hope. When they pulled apart, both were breathing unsteadily. Cole rested his forehead against hers, his hands still cradling her face. "This is not a good idea," he said. "I know. You're leaving as soon as the snow clears. I know. I've got nothing to offer you, just this cabin and a man who's forgotten how to live." She placed her hand over his heart, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. "You're living now." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she melted against him. When his arms tightened around her, she felt safe for the first time in years. But even as warmth bloomed through her chest, her mind whispered warnings. She'd thought Thomas would keep her safe once, too. Cole must have felt her tense because he pulled back immediately. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "No!" She caught his hand before he could move away. "It's not you. I need time. To remember how to trust. To trust myself." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "We've got time. Storm's not going anywhere." That night, the temperature plummeted again. Even with the fire roaring, cold seeped through every crack. Eliza huddled under her blankets, shivering despite the layers. She heard Cole moving around, adding wood to the fire, checking the windows. "This isn't working," he said finally. "You're going to catch your death." "I'm fine. Like hell you are." He gathered up his own blankets and furs, spreading them on the floor beside her. "Just for warmth, nothing more." She should have protested, but her teeth were chattering too hard to form words. When he lay down beside her, carefully not touching, she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Come here," he said gruffly. "I can hear your teeth from here." She moved closer, letting him pull her back against his chest. His arms came around her, and warmth enveloped her like a blessing. She could feel his heart beating against her spine. Steady and strong. "Better?" "Yes." The word came out as a sigh. "Cole? Thank you for saving me, for everything." His arms tightened fractionally. "Don't thank me yet. Storm's not over." But as she drifted toward sleep, warm and safe in his embrace, Eliza thought he might be talking about more than the weather. Outside, the wind howled its lonely song, but inside the circle of his arms, she found a peace she'd thought lost forever. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Thomas, the journey to Cook City, the question of what lay between her and this damaged, gentle man. But tonight, with the fire dying to embers and Cole's breathing steady against her hair, she allowed herself this moment of grace. Just two souls seeking shelter from their storms, finding unexpected harbor in each other. "Don't let go," she whispered into the darkness. "Please." "I've been cold for so long." His lips pressed against her hair, soft as snowfall. "I won't. Rest now. I've got you." And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Eliza Monroe believed those words were true. Morning came with an awkwardness that hadn't existed before. Eliza woke to find herself alone, the space beside her already cold. Through the window, she could see Cole by the woodpile, splitting logs with violent precision. Each swing of the axe spoke of internal struggle. She dressed quickly in the blue calico, her fingers trembling on the buttons. What had seemed natural in the darkness now felt fraught with complication. When he came inside, stamping snow from his boots, they couldn't quite meet each other's eyes. "Coffee's ready," he said to the fireplace. "Thank you," she told the floor. They moved around each other carefully, as if the kiss had turned them into strangers again. The easy companionship of the past days had vanished, replaced by a charged awareness that made every accidental touch feel like lightning. By midday, the tension was unbearable. Cole had retreated into himself, speaking only when necessary, his jaw tight with some internal battle. Eliza found herself chattering nervously about nothing, trying to fill the silence that pressed between them like a physical thing. "Stop," he said finally, his voice rough. "Just stop. What do you want me to do?" She set down the cup she'd been drying for the third time. Pretend last night didn't happen? Yes. He turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes took her breath. That's exactly what we need to do. Why? Because in a day, maybe two, you'll ride out of here and never look back. Because I've got nothing to offer but a cabin in the middle of nowhere and a man who's half dead inside. Because you deserve better than... Don't! Her voice came out sharper than intended. Don't you dare tell me what I deserve. I've had a lifetime of men telling me what I should want, what I should feel. I won't take it from you, too. He flinched as if she'd struck him. That's not what I... Isn't it? She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. You kissed me last night. You held me like I mattered, and now you want to pretend it meant nothing? It meant everything. The words exploded from him. That's the problem. Don't you see? I buried my heart with my wife and daughter. I came up here to die slowly, in peace. Then you show up, half frozen and fighting mad, and suddenly I'm feeling things I've got no right to feel. The raw honesty in his voice broke something loose in her chest. You think I wanted this? I was running to a new life where I could be alone, where I'd never have to depend on another man again. I didn't plan on you. They stood facing each other, breathing hard. The truth laid bare between them. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the windows like a reminder of the world beyond these walls. I'm scared too, she admitted quietly. Thomas, he was kind at first, gentle. I thought I loved him. By the time I saw what he really was, it was too late. How do I know? She swallowed hard. How do I know you won't change too? Cole's expression softened. He reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You don't, just like I don't know if I'll wake up tomorrow and find you gone, taking what's left of my heart with you. That's what trust is, stepping into the unknown anyway. I don't know if I remember how to trust. Then we'll learn together, or we won't. But Eliza... His thumb traced her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. I'd rather have these few days with you than a lifetime of safety alone. She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. You're not making this easier. Not trying to... When she opened her eyes, he was watching her with such intensity it stole her breath. This time, when he kissed her, there was nothing hesitant about it. His mouth claimed hers with a desperate hunger that matched her own. She pressed against him, her hands fisting in his shirt, trying to get closer, to chase away the cold that had lived in her bones for so long. He backed her against the wall, his body caging hers, and she should have felt trapped but instead felt sheltered, protected, his hands tangled in her hair, and he kissed her like a drowning man seeking air. Cole, she gasped when they broke apart. Tell me to stop. His voice was rough against her throat. Tell me this is a mistake. But she couldn't. Instead, she pulled his head down for another kiss, pouring all her fear and longing into it. They were walking on dangerous ground. She knew. Her body remembered too well the price of trusting the wrong man. But Cole's hands were gentle even in passion, and when she tensed involuntarily, he immediately eased back. Too much? No. Yes, I don't know. She buried her face in his chest, frustrated by her own contradictions. I want, but I'm not ready for... I know. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. There's no rush. We have time. But did they? The storm could break any moment. Thomas could find her. Cole could remember all the reasons this was a bad idea. Time felt both infinite and terribly finite in this small cabin. They spent the rest of the day in a dance of advance and retreat, stealing kisses by the fire, hands clasping while they talked. Cole teaching her to play cards with a worn deck he'd had since his lawman days. Every touch was exploration and promise, building something fragile and new between them. That evening, Eliza told him about her life before Thomas, her father's horse farm in Ohio, her mother's death when she was 12, the slow slide into debt that had made Thomas's courtship seem like salvation. He paid off the farm, she said, staring into her coffee. Papa was so grateful, and Thomas was handsome, successful. Everyone said I was lucky. Everyone was wrong. I know that now. But then, I was 22 and thought I understood the world. She laughed bitterly. 5 years later, I know I understand nothing. You understand survival. That's more than most. She looked at him then, this man who'd carved out a life in the wilderness rather than face his pain. We're both survivors, but maybe it's time we learn to live instead of just survive. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know if I remember how. Neither do I. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. But maybe we could figure it out together. And when the storm breaks, when you have to leave, the question she'd been avoiding hung between them. I don't know, she admitted. But right now, in this moment, I'm here. You're here. Isn't that enough? He lifted their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. It's more than I've had in 3 years. That night, they lay together again by the fire, fully clothed but wrapped in each other. Cole told her about his childhood in Texas, about learning to track from an old Apache scout, about the day he'd decided to take up the badge. She shared her own stories, the game she'd played in her father's barn, her first horse, the dream she'd once had of traveling west to see the ocean. You still could, he murmured against her hair. See the ocean. I mean, maybe. She traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm. Cole? What happens when morning comes? He was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, I don't know, but whatever happens, I'm glad the storm brought you to my door. She lifted her head to look at him. In the firelight, his face was all plains and shadows, beautiful in its imperfection. So am I. He kissed her then, slow and deep, and she let herself fall into it, into him. Tomorrow would come with all its complications and impossibilities. But tonight, wrapped in his arms with the fire crackling and the snow falling soft outside, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of happiness. Don't let go, she whispered, echoing her words from the night before. Not yet. His arms tightened around her. Never, he promised. And in that moment, she almost believed him. Dawn broke clear and cold, with a quality of light that spoke of change. Eliza knew before she even looked outside that the storm had finally broken. Through the window, she could see blue sky between the clouds, and the snow had stopped falling. Cole was gone. She found his tracks leading to the lean-to and followed them, her heart already heavy with what this day would bring. He was saddling her mare, his movements methodical and precise. He didn't look up when she approached. Trail should be passable by tomorrow, he said to the horse's flank. Maybe even this afternoon if the sun holds. Cole, I'll pack you some provisions, enough to get you to Cook City. His voice was carefully neutral, as if they were strangers again. Your clothes are dry. I mended the tear in your riding skirt. Stop. She placed a hand on his arm, feeling the tension coiled there. Please, look at me. When he finally turned, his gray eyes were shuttered, distant. The man who'd held her through the night was gone, replaced by the closed-off stranger she'd first met. This is for the best, he said. You know it is. I know nothing of the sort. Anger flared in her chest, hot and welcome after the cold dread. You're pushing me away. I'm setting you free. He turned back to the mare, tightening the saddle girth. Go to your cousin. Start your new life. Forget. Her voice rose. Forget about what? About you? About the way you kiss me like I'm air and you're drowning? About how you hold me like I'm something precious? She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. Or should I forget about the way you're breaking my heart right now? Something cracked in his expression. Don't you understand? I can't lose you too. I can't. I won't survive it. Not again. So instead you'll throw me away? I'm saving us both. He pulled free of her grip. What did you think would happen, Eliza? That you'd stay here? Give up everything for a broken man in a cabin? Maybe, yes. I don't know. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. All I know is that for the first time in years, I felt safe. I felt wanted. Not possessed or controlled, but truly wanted. You are wanted." The words came out raw, torn from somewhere deep. "God help me. I want you so much it's eating me alive. That's why you have to go." That doesn't even make sense, doesn't it? He stalked toward her, backing her against the stable wall. "I'm no good for you. I'm a ghost playing at being alive. One day you'd wake up and realize you'd traded one prison for another. You're nothing like Thomas." "No, I'm worse. At least he was whole when you met him, even if that hole was rotten. I'm just pieces held together by stubbornness and whiskey." She reached up, framing his face with her hands. "I like your pieces." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch for a moment. Then he straightened, stepping back. "The answer is no. Eliza, whatever you're asking, whatever you're offering, no." The rejection hit her like a physical blow. She'd opened herself to him, made herself vulnerable in ways she'd sworn never to do again. And he was throwing it back in her face. Pride stiffened her spine. "Fine." She moved past him to stroke her mare's neck, needing something to do with her hands. "I'll be ready to leave within the hour." "Eliza." "No." She didn't turn around. "You've made your position clear. I won't beg." She heard him leave, his footsteps heavy in the snow. Back in the cabin, she changed into her own clothes with shaking hands, the blue calico dress she folded carefully, placing it back in the trunk with the other remnants of a dead woman's life. Everything felt wrong. The clothes, the cabin that had become a haven, the thought of leaving. Cole didn't return. She could see him through the window, chopping wood with a single-minded focus, as if he could split himself free of whatever he was feeling. She packed her meager belongings, checked her hidden money pouch, tried to prepare herself for the road ahead. But her traitorous mind kept returning to the past days, the way he'd carried her through the storm, his gentle hands tending her ankle, the stories shared by firelight, the kisses that had awakened something in her she'd thought Thomas had killed forever. By noon, she was ready. Her ankles still ached but would hold. The sun had indeed continued to shine, and while the trail would be difficult, it was passable. She had no more excuses to stay. She found Cole by the woodpile, stacking the split logs with unnecessary precision. "I'm ready." He nodded without looking at her. "I'll walk you down to the main trail. Make sure you don't get lost." "I can manage alone." "No." Now he did look at her, and she saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. "Let me do this one last thing." They walked in silence, leading the mare through the snow-laden pines. The world was crystalline, beautiful in its harsh purity. Their breath clouded in the cold air, and the only sounds were the crunch of snow and the occasional call of a winter bird. At the trail marker, he stopped. "Follow this down about 5 miles. You'll hit the main road. Turn east. Cook City is another 10 miles from there." "Thank you." The words were inadequate for everything she meant. He checked the mare's tack one more time, tightened a strap that didn't need tightening. "If you run into trouble, I won't. But if you do—" "Cole," she caught his hand. "I'll be fine. I'm tougher than I look." "I know." He squeezed her fingers once, then helped her mount. "That's what terrifies me." She looked down at him, memorizing his face, the silver threading through his dark hair, the lines carved by grief and weather, the eyes that had seen too much. "It doesn't have to end like this." "Yes, it does." He stepped back. "Be happy. Eliza, be free. That's all I want for you." "And what about what I want?" "You'll want different things once you're away from here. Once you remember there's a whole world beyond this mountain." She wanted to argue, to rage, to make him see what he was throwing away. But the wall he'd built around himself was too high, too thick. She'd scaled it once, briefly, but now he'd reinforced it against her. "Goodbye, Cole. Goodbye, Eliza." She turned the mare toward the trail, not trusting herself to look back, but at the bend, she couldn't help herself. He was still standing there, a solitary figure against the white landscape, watching her go. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment she thought he might call her back. His hand even lifted slightly, as if to reach for her. Then it dropped, and he turned away, walking back toward his cabin, his isolation, his chosen prison. Eliza faced forward, blinking against tears that wanted to freeze on her cheeks. Each step the mare took carried her farther from the only place she'd felt safe in years, but she didn't turn back. He'd made his choice, and she had too much pride to fight for someone who didn't want to be saved. The trail stretched ahead, winding down through the mountains toward Cook City and the new life that waited there. She'd survive this. She'd survived Thomas, survived the storm, survived years of fear and pain. A broken heart seemed almost trivial in comparison. But as the cabin disappeared behind the trees, as the distance grew between her and the man who'd brought her back to life, only to send her away, Eliza wondered if surviving was really enough anymore. Cole had shown her, briefly, what living could feel like. Now she had to figure out how to do it alone. The mare picked her way carefully down the mountain, and Eliza didn't look back again. There was nothing behind her now but memories and might-have-beens. Ahead lay uncertainty, but at least it was hers to shape. Still, the farther she rode, the colder she felt, and it had nothing to do with the mountain air. The shot came from nowhere, spooking her mare into a wild dance that nearly threw Eliza from the saddle. She fought to control the frightened animal, her heart hammering as a man emerged from the trees ahead, rifle aimed at her chest. Well, Mrs. Monroe. The man's smile was cold as the mountain wind. Mister, Monroe's been mighty worried about you. Eliza recognized him. Jake Garrett, one of Thomas's hired men. Her blood turned to ice. How did you find me? Been watching the trails since the storm broke. Figured you'd have holed up somewhere, waited it out. He gestured with the rifle. Off the horse, nice and slow. Her mind raced. The trail was narrow here, steep drops on one side, thick forest on the other. No room to run. Thomas sent you? Paid good money to bring you home. Said you weren't thinking straight after your accident, grief-stricken. Garrett's laugh was ugly. Gotta hand it to him, telling folks you were mad with mourning for him while he was standing right there. Man's got stones. I'm not going back. Wasn't a question. He moved closer, and she could smell whiskey on his breath. Though Mr. Monroe did say I could take my time getting you there, long as you arrived in mostly one piece. Bile rose in her throat. She knew what that meant. Thomas's cruelty extended through the men he hired. I have money. So does he. Now get down, or I'll pull you down. Eliza dismounted slowly, her ankles screaming as it took her weight. She stumbled, exaggerating the weakness, letting Garrett think her helpless. That's better. He reached for her arm. We'll take it nice and easy. The attack came from the forest like an avalanche. Cole slammed into Garrett, driving him to the ground. The rifle went flying, disappearing into the snow. The two men rolled, trading brutal punches, grunting with effort and pain. Garrett was bigger, heavier, but Cole fought with the fury of a man with everything to lose. They crashed into trees, scattered snow, left blood on the white ground. Garrett got his hands around Cole's throat, but Cole drove a knee into his ribs, breaking the hold. Run! Cole shouted at Eliza, even as Garrett's fist connected with his jaw, but she couldn't run. Couldn't leave him. Instead, she scrambled for the rifle, her hands shaking as she brought it up. Stop! Both of you! Stop! Garrett froze, Cole's shirt bunched in his fists. Cole was breathing hard, blood running from his nose and a cut above his eye. Easy there, little lady, Garrett said. You don't want to. I've shot rabbits and deer since I was 12, Eliza said, her voice steadier than her hands. A man's a much bigger target. You won't shoot. But uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Try me. She cocked the rifle. I'm already running from one murder. What's one more? Cole used the distraction to drive his elbow into Garrett's solar plexus. The bigger man doubled over, gasping, and Cole's fist dropped him to the snow. He didn't get back up. For a moment, they just stared at each other across Garrett's unconscious form, Cole bloodied and breathing hard. Eliza still holding the rifle with white knuckles. You followed me, she said. Couldn't let you go alone. He wiped blood from his mouth. Kept thinking about what you said, about Thomas being alive, about him looking for you. I tried to stay away, but he shrugged, wincing at the movement. Turns out I'm a selfish bastard after all. Cole, we need to move. He checked Garrett's pulse, then started dragging him off the trail. He won't be out long. Together they got Garrett tied to a tree with rope from Eliza's saddlebags. Cole found the man's horse tethered nearby and sent it running with a slap to its rump. That'll slow him down some, he said. But we need to get you somewhere safe. If Thomas sent one man, he sent more. We? Hope bloomed in her chest. I thought you were done with me. He cupped her face, his thumb gentle on her cheek. I'm a fool. Eliza, a scared, broken fool who almost let you ride away. When I saw you leave, when I went back to that empty cabin. He shook his head. It was like Sarah and Rose all over again. Losing everything because I wasn't brave enough to hold on. I'm not Sarah. No, you're Eliza. You're fierce and brave and too stubborn to let a man's stupidity drive you off. His smile was crooked, painful looking with his split lip. If you'll have me, I'd like to stop running from life. She dropped the rifle and threw herself into his arms, not caring about the blood or the cold or Garrett groaning back to consciousness behind them. Don't you ever push me away again? Never, he promised against her hair. We'll face whatever comes together. A sound made them pull apart, horses approaching from down the trail. Cole grabbed the rifle, pushing Eliza behind him, but relaxed as a familiar figure rounded the bend. Thought I might find you here. Sheriff Daniels from Cook City called out, 2 deputies flanking him. His keen eyes took in the scene, Garrett tied to the tree, Cole's battered face, Eliza's protective position. Got a wire yesterday about a woman gone missing. Husband's offering quite a reward. Eliza's heart sank, but Daniels continued. Course, then I got another wire from Sheriff Morrison in Billings. Seems Doc Morrison's daughter finally convinced him to speak up about certain injuries he'd treated. Injuries that didn't match the stories told. Sheriff, Cole started, you still got that badge? Hartwell? Daniels interrupted. The one you never officially turned in, Cole frowned. In my cabin, but, good, consider yourself deputized for the transport of this prisoner. He nodded at Garrett, who was cursing steadily now. Man's wanted for assault, attempted kidnapping, and probably a dozen other things we'll discover. You'll need to file a report. Of course. Both of you. Eliza felt her knees go weak with relief. Thomas? Being questioned as we speak. Seems several servants have found their courage now that the first domino's fallen. Daniel's expression softened. You're safe. Mrs. Monroe. Or whatever name you choose to use now. Miss, she said firmly. Miss Eliza Caldwell. Her mother's maiden name felt like armor. And I was never married to Thomas Whitmore. Whatever papers he has are forged. I figured as much. Daniels signaled his deputies to collect Garrett. Why don't you both come back to town? Hartwell, you look like you could use some medical attention. Miss Caldwell, I expect you're eager to see your cousin. Eliza looked at Cole, suddenly uncertain. In the heat of danger, everything had seemed clear. But now, actually, Sheriff, Cole said, his eyes never leaving Eliza's face. I think we'll take our time getting to town, have some things to discuss. He held out his hand to her. If the lady's willing. She took his hand without hesitation. The lady's willing, Daniels chuckled. Suit yourselves. But Hartwell, don't take another 3 years to come down off that mountain. Town could use a good lawman again. As the sheriff and his men rode away with their prisoner, Eliza and Cole stood alone on the trail where everything had almost ended. The sun was starting to sink behind the mountains, painting the snow pink and gold. So, Eliza said, what now? Now. Cole pulled her close, mindful of his injuries. Now we go home. We get warm. We figure out what comes next. He kissed her forehead. Together. I like the sound of that. She looked up at him. This man who'd come back for her, who'd fought for her, who'd finally chosen love over fear. But Cole, that cabin of yours needs some work, starting with curtains. His laugh echoed off the mountains. Whatever you want, curtains, tablecloths, a rocking chair by the fire. Hell, I'll build you a whole new cabin if that's what it takes. Just you, she said softly. That's all I need. Just you, choosing us every day. Every day. He promised, and sealed it with a kiss that tasted of blood and hope and new beginnings. They rode back up the mountain together as shadows lengthened across the snow. Behind them lay fear and violence and all the broken pieces of their pasts. Ahead waited a cabin that would become a home, a life built on trust and choice and the courage to love after loss. It wouldn't be easy. They both carried scars that would take time to heal. But as they climbed toward the cabin where their story had begun, Eliza knew they would heal together. No more running, no more hiding. Just two survivors learning, finally, how to live. The courthouse in Cook City was packed despite the early hour. Word had spread quickly about the woman who'd escaped Thomas Whitmore and the reclusive former lawman who'd protected her. Eliza sat straight-backed in the witness chair, her hands folded calmly in her lap, though Cole could see the white of her knuckles from where he stood at the back of the room. State your name for the record, Judge Patterson instructed. Eliza Grace Caldwell. Her voice carried clear and strong through the room. And you were never legally married to Thomas Whitmore? No, sir. He forced me into a ceremony, threatened my father's life if I didn't comply. The minister was someone Thomas paid. I doubt he was even ordained. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Thomas's lawyer objected, but the judge waved him down. Continue, Miss Caldwell. For the next hour, Eliza laid bare the truth of her years with Thomas. The courtroom grew quieter with each revelation. Several women dabbed at their eyes. Men shifted uncomfortably. Cole's hands clenched into fists as she described the escalating violence, the isolation, the final beating that had nearly killed her. And then you fled. Yes, I took what money I could find and ran. I was trying to reach my cousin here in Cook City when the storm caught me. And that's when Mr. Hartwell found you? Eliza's eyes found Cole across the room. A soft smile touched her lips. Yes, he saved my life in more ways than one. When it came time for Cole to testify about the attack on the trail, he kept his answers short and factual. Yes, he'd followed Miss Caldwell because he was concerned for her safety. Yes, Garrett had threatened her with violence. Yes, he'd intervened to protect her. You've been living alone up in the mountains for some years. Mr. Hartwell, the prosecutor noted. What made you come down for Miss Caldwell? Cole was quiet for a moment. Sometimes a man gets a second chance at life. Only a fool would let that slip away. Thomas's lawyer tried to paint Eliza as a hysterical woman, Cole as a violent hermit, but Doc Morrison's testimony about old injuries, the servants who'd finally found courage to speak up, and Garrett's own confession in exchange for leniency made their case crumble. By noon, it was over. Thomas Whitmore was bound over for trial on charges of assault, false imprisonment, and fraud. Garrett would serve time for attempted kidnapping, and Eliza was free. Outside the courthouse, the crowd pressed close, full of congratulations and curiosity. Eliza handled it all with grace, though Cole could see the strain around her eyes. When Margaret Sawyer pushed through to embrace her cousin, Eliza's composure finally cracked. Oh, my dear girl, Margaret murmured, holding Eliza tight. When I got your letter saying you were coming, I never imagined, but you're safe now. You'll stay with me, of course. I've got a nice room already. Eliza pulled back, glancing at Cole. Actually, Aunt Margaret, she's staying with me, Cole said firmly, if she wants to. Margaret's eyebrows rose to her hairline. Mr. Hartwell, surely that's not proper. Nothing about our situation has been proper, Eliza interrupted. And I find I no longer care much what people think is appropriate. She moved to Cole's side, taking his arm. I'll visit Aunt Margaret, but my place is with Cole. The older woman studied them both, then smiled. Your mother always was the unconventional one in the family. I see you take after her." She patted Eliza's cheek. "Be happy, dear. That's all that matters." As the crowd dispersed, Sheriff Daniels approached. "That offer stands. Hartwell, town needs a good sheriff. The job's yours if you want it." Cole looked down at Eliza. "What do you think?" "I think you're a lawman at heart," she said softly. "You can't hide from who you are forever. I'd need to find a place in town. Can't be sheriff from a cabin in the mountains. Or," Daniels said with a knowing smile, "you could split your time. Keep the cabin for when you need the quiet. Plenty of folks do it." They talked logistics for a few minutes before Daniels clapped Cole on the shoulder and took his leave. Finally, alone on the courthouse steps, Cole and Eliza stood looking out at the bustling town. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Town life's different from the mountains. People talk. They'll have opinions about us living together unmarried. Let them talk." She turned to face him. "Unless, is that what you want, to marry?" The question hung between them. Cole touched her face gently. "What I want is you, however you'll have me. We've both been trapped by other people's expectations. I won't do that to you. And if I wanted to marry you, not because society demands it, but because I choose it." His breath caught. "Eliza, I'm not saying now," she continued quickly. "We have time to figure things out, but someday, when we're ready, when it's just about us and not about propriety or protection or anything else, would you want that?" "Yes." The word came out rough with emotion. "When you're ready, if you're ever ready, yes." She rose up on her toes and kissed him there on the courthouse steps, in full view of half the town. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "Come on," she said, tugging his hand. "I want to see this town you're thinking of protecting. Show me where the mercantile is. Those curtains won't buy themselves." He laughed, allowing her to pull him down the street. "Curtains. Of course that's your priority. And a proper cook stove. And maybe a rug for beside the bed. Oh, and we'll need to expand the cabin if you're going to have an office in town. You'll need somewhere to store your law books and papers." Cole listened to her plans, watched her face animate with dreams of their future, and felt something he'd thought dead forever bloom in his chest. Hope, joy, the possibility of a life worth living. They spent the afternoon exploring the town, Eliza charming shopkeepers and making mental notes of everything they'd need. Cole found himself drawn into discussions about law enforcement, about bringing order to a town growing faster than its ability to manage itself. By evening, he'd agreed to take the sheriff position on a trial basis. As the sun set, they finally headed back up the mountain. The cabin looked different somehow as they approached, smaller but also full of possibility. "Home," Eliza said softly. "It's not much. It's perfect." She turned in the saddle to look at him. "It's ours. That makes it perfect." Inside, she moved around the space with new purpose, talking about where things could go, how they could add on come spring. Cole built up the fire and watched her, marveling at how she'd transformed not just his space, but his entire world. "I love you," he said suddenly, the words escaping without thought. She stilled, then turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Say it again." "I love you, Eliza Caldwell. I love your strength and your stubbornness. I love the way you fought for yourself and the way you fought for me. I love—" She crossed to him, stopping his words with a kiss. "I love you too. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say those words again, to mean them. But I do. I love you, Cole Hartwell." They held each other by the fire. Two people who'd thought themselves too broken for love, who'd found healing in each other's arms. Outside, night fell over the mountains, but inside their cabin, all was warmth and light and the quiet joy of new beginnings. Tomorrow would bring challenges. There would be talk in town, adjustments to make, a life to build together. Cole would need to learn how to be a lawman again, and Eliza would need to learn how to trust in her freedom. But tonight, they had each other and the knowledge that they'd chosen this, chosen love over fear. "No more running," Cole murmured into her hair. No more hiding, she agreed. Just us, facing whatever comes. Together, always together. And in the cabin where their story began, surrounded by the vast silence of the mountains and the crackling warmth of the fire, they started the rest of their lives. The letter arrived on a morning when spring was just beginning to touch the mountains. Eliza recognized Cole's careful handwriting immediately, though it had been a week since she'd seen him. She broke the seal with trembling fingers. If you're still cold, the fire's still waiting here. Such simple words, but they made her heart race. She'd been staying with Margaret for 7 days, helping at the boarding house, trying to build that new life she'd talked about. But every night she stood at her window, looking up at the mountains, wondering if she'd made the right choice in giving them both space to think. You going to stare at that letter all day, or you going to do something about it? Margaret asked from the doorway, knowing smile on her face. I thought I needed time, Eliza said, to be sure I wasn't just latching onto him out of gratitude or fear. And every morning I wake up thinking about him. Every night I fall asleep wishing he was there. She pressed the letter to her chest. Is it too soon? People will say, Eliza Grace Caldwell. Margaret interrupted. You survived years of hell. You found a good man who loves you. Who cares what people say? Life's too short and too hard to waste it worrying about gossip. By noon, Eliza was on horseback, riding up the familiar trail. The snow was melting, revealing patches of brown earth and the first brave wildflowers. The mountains seemed to welcome her back, and her heart grew lighter with each mile. She found Cole splitting wood behind the cabin, sleeves rolled up despite the cool air. He didn't seem surprised to see her, just set down his axe and waited as she dismounted. I got your letter, she said. I see that. I'm not cold anymore. She continued, moving closer. Haven't been since the night you found me. But Cole, I don't want the fire to be all we have. I want morning coffee and evening conversations. I want arguments about curtains and debates about whether to plant vegetables or flowers. He silenced her with a kiss, pulling her against him like he'd been starving for her touch. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I've been a fool, he said. This week without you, the cabin's just walls and a roof. You're what makes it home. Then why did you let me go? Because you deserve the choice, real choice, not driven by storm or danger or having nowhere else to go. He pulled back to look at her. Do you choose this, Eliza? Choose me. I choose you, she said firmly. Today, tomorrow, every day after, I choose you, Cole Hartwell. His smile transformed his face, years falling away until she could see the man he'd been before grief marked him. Then let's go home. They spent the rest of the day setting the cabin to rights, Eliza unpacking her things with a permanence that made Cole stop and stare. Her brush on his dresser, her spare boots by the door, small things that spoke of staying, of building a life together. As evening fell, they sat on the porch Cole had started building, watching the sunset paint the peaks gold and rose. The world spread out before them, vast and full of possibility. Sheriff Daniels came by yesterday, Cole said. Wanted to know if I'd made a decision about the job. What did you tell him? That I needed to talk to my partner first. The word made her smile. Partner? In everything, if you're willing. He took her hand, lacing their fingers together. I can't be sheriff if you're not comfortable with it. The danger, the time away. You're a protector, she said softly. It's who you are. I'd never ask you to be less than yourself. And you? What do you want? She considered the question. I want to help people. Maybe work with Doc Morrison, learn healing, or help Margaret with the boarding house sometimes. I want to be useful, to have purpose beyond just surviving. You could do both. Town could use another person with medical knowledge. And Margaret's mentioned needing help more than once. I want to learn to shoot better too, she added. If you're going to be sheriff, I need to be able to protect what's ours. The fierce determination in her voice made him pull her closer. I'll teach you. Though you seemed to handle that rifle pretty well when Garrett... I was terrified, she admitted. But I'd do it again. I'd do anything to keep you safe." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell and stars emerged, brilliant in the clear mountain air. The temperature dropped, and Cole rose to go inside, but Eliza caught his hand. "Wait, there's something else." She stood, turning to face him. "Cole, these past weeks have taught me something. Life is uncertain. We don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't want to waste any more time being afraid or proper or cautious." He watched her with those gray eyes that saw everything. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when you asked if I'd want to marry someday, my answer is yes, but not someday." She took a breath. "Now, soon, as soon as we can arrange it." "Eliza, I know what I want," she interrupted. "I want to be your wife, not because anyone expects it or demands it, but because I choose it. Because when I introduce you to people, I want them to know that we belong to each other, that we've claimed each other before God and man and these mountains that brought us together." Cole stood frozen for a moment, then swept her into his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. When he set her down, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "You sure?" he asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "Then marry me, Eliza Caldwell. Tomorrow if you want. Today if we could manage it." "Yes," she breathed, and kissed him under the vast expanse of stars. They were married 3 days later in Margaret's boarding house parlor, with half the town crowded in to witness. Eliza wore the blue calico dress from Cole's trunk, Sarah's dress, given with blessing for a new beginning. Cole wore his old badge, newly polished, accepting both his past and his future. Judge Patterson performed the ceremony, his usually stern face soft with genuine pleasure. When he pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in the mountains. That night, in their cabin with new curtains at the windows and a proper rug beside the bed, they lay entwined as the fire burned low. "No regrets?" Cole asked, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "None? You? Only that it took a blizzard to bring you to me." She smiled against his chest. "Maybe that's what we needed. A storm to break us open, to freeze away everything that didn't matter. And what matters? This," she said simply. "Us. The life we're building. The love we chose despite everything that tried to stop us." He tilted her face up for a kiss, deep and full of promise. "I love you, Mrs. Hartwell. And I love you, Sheriff Hartwell." Outside, a warm wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of spring, of new growth, of possibilities endless as the Montana sky. Inside, two souls who'd thought themselves lost had found their way home to each other. "Don't let go," Eliza whispered, echoing words from their first nights together. "Not ever." "Never," Cole promised, holding her close. "The fire will always be here. We'll tend it together." And they did. Through summers and winters, through the challenges of Cole's work as sheriff and Eliza's growing reputation as a healer, through the joy of children and the sorrow of losses, they tended that fire. It burned steady and true, warming not just their cabin but their community, a beacon for other lost souls seeking shelter from their own storms. The mountains watched over them, ancient and patient, keeping their secrets and their joy. And on cold nights, when the wind howled like it had during that long-ago blizzard, Eliza would nestle closer to Cole and whisper, "I'm not cold anymore." His answer was always the same, murmured against her hair with all the love a heart could hold. "Good, neither am I." Thank you for joining us around the Wild West Campfire for this tale of love, survival, and second chances in the Montana mountains. Where are you listening to this story from? Drop a comment below and let us know. We love connecting with listeners from around the world. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales of romance and adventure from the American frontier. Share your thoughts about Eliza and Cole's journey in the comments. Until the next time, partners, keep your fires burning bright.